Good morning, everybody. Tuesday morning drive-in. Want to touch on the subject of hell this morning, just briefly. It's a big subject, so I can only touch it just briefly this morning. In other words, what some people believe about the subject of hell, which is eternal torment. All through history, there's been a lot of different views of this subject, and really just in the last seems like the last few hundred years, people really stopped talking about it and just settled on what they believe it is and really stopped looking at it. One thing that I want to say right up front is you're not going to understand this subject by listening to somebody or just hearing what other people have to say about it. You have to actually do the work of studying and finding out what does the Bible actually say. And you do have to take a big subject like this and break it into pieces, because it touches a lot of questions that need to be answered. There's a lot of paganism and Greek and Roman philosophy that has crept into the church over the last couple thousand years and has influenced what people teach. So when you're looking at this subject, you want to pay attention to the Hebrew and the Greek words that are used in the Old and New Testament, and to find out what those actually mean. The Bible is a highly figurative book, and it uses colorful and poetic language to tell stories. I was just listening to, it's somewhere in Chronicles and Kings, it talks about two trees having a conversation with each other. So that's obviously a parabolic story, or he's using something to show something else. So when you're looking at the Old Testament, just briefly, there's three words that are translated from one original Hebrew word. The original Hebrew word is Sheol, and I'm not going to pronounce any of these Hebrew or Greek words right, so don't get excited. But the word Sheol is translated into three different words in our English version, both where it's translated into Greek and then into English. The three words that the word Sheol was translated into are grave, hell, and pit. It's used 64 times. 31 times it's translated hell, 31 times it's translated grave, and I think it's 3 times it's translated pit. And when you're looking at this subject, the words that are used it's either talking about a literal grave when it uses the word hell or grave or pit. It's talking about the literal graveyard, or it's talking about a figurative grave, or it's talking about a condition of suffering while people are alive. This one's important. While people are alive and they're going through some terrible tragedy, the Bible defines that as you're going through a hellish condition. One easy example is Jonah. When he was in the belly of the whale, I think this is in the 2nd chapter, he says, "Out of the belly of hell cried I." So he was in a condition of suffering. There's another place, I can't remember the address, when King David was running from Saul when Saul was trying to kill him before David was king. And he mentions being in some kind of condition related to hell. So he was suffering, running for his life every day, being threatened under being caught and killed by Saul and the armies of Israel. So those are a couple easy examples. So just remember, those three words that you read in your English version as grave, hell, and pit all come from one Hebrew word. In the New Testament, there is, for the word hell, I believe there's 3 words, and this might be boring you to death, but this is what I mean when you have to study your Bible. When you hear people talk about this subject, you can tell who is actually studying and who is actually just reciting the common mainstream narrative of what this subject means: eternal torment, hell. So there's three words, and I won't pronounce these right, but the one word is Hades. That obviously comes from Greek culture. The second word is Tartarus. I think that's only used once or twice. And then the third word would be Gehenna. And that is specifically related to a place. Jesus, every time he uses the word hell, the Greek word is Gehenna. And what that was is it was an actual physical place outside of the walls of Jerusalem where there was a deep pit. It's called the Valley of Hinnom. There was a deep cavern or pit, and this is what was used in ancient times. I think you'll see this, the Valley of Hinnom, in like Jeremiah 7 or something. I might have that address wrong, but you'll see this where pagan religions would sacrifice their children, and this ended up actually being like a natural dump for bodies, for carcasses of bodies, whether it was during a battle or whether it was pagans would sacrifice their children on the wall to these false deities, and they would literally throw the bodies over the wall into this cavern. So it was known as the Valley of Hinnom. It was a place of cursing. So when Jesus says the word hell, just remember, he is saying Gehenna. And there was not a wide agreement about what the word hell actually meant during this time. Not everybody was in agreement. So another part of this is you have to touch on what does the Bible say. This is all unpacking this subject. You have to touch on what does the Bible say as where do the wicked or the ungodly go. If you look through the Old Testament and you also look through the New Testament, what does Jesus say where the wicked go? Where do the apostles say that the wicked go? Where does the Old Testament writer say that the wicked go? What is the end of the wicked? And the Bible uses words like perish, destroy, consumed, to be like chaff that's blown away in the wind. Those are just a brief view of what does the Bible say about where the dead go. Another part of this subject, that these are all questions. I'm just giving you the questions that you need to ask yourself when you're studying this subject. Another big one is the assumption that has been accepted that the soul of man is immortal. This is not a biblical idea. This crept in through pagan religions, all the way back from Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. All of those pagan religions taught something about the underworld or something about the immortality of the soul. So these ideas crept in to the church, to the first century church, and down after the first century. They crept in through Greek philosophy. Plato and Socrates taught that you have an immortal soul and a mortal body. These are Greek philosophers. These are not believers. These are pagan humanists, basically. And so those ideas crept into the church, some of which were through people who believed in Greek philosophy that got converted to Christianity. And the problem is that they were converted, but when they were converted, they brought in some of their old beliefs into the church, and these beliefs ended up getting integrated into Christian teaching, and they just stuck. Some of these ideas just stick through history, and down here a couple thousand years later, we just assume that everybody agreed and that it was right. So all these things have to be, these are just a few questions you have to ask yourself. What does the Bible say? What is the end of the wicked? What is the end of the ungodly? What is the condition of the soul? Is the soul of man immortal? And last part, this is what I started off with, what do these words actually mean? One last thing I'll say is, don't take the scriptures out of context. You have to leave the scriptures in the context of what they were written. Don't jump over here and grab this verse and that verse. How was the author writing? What was his subject? What was his topic? Who was speaking? Who were they speaking to? And why were they saying what they were saying? Were they saying something that's literal, or were they using figures of speech or parabolic language? All right, that's enough for now. I know this went a little long. God bless you. Study your Bible. Have a great Tuesday.